Okay, welcome back. Hope you're all having a great week. Today, we're continuing our RBT exam practice question series where we're going through a set of questions and breaking them down together. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com for our practice exams, our study guide, and our proven combo pack. We now offer channel memberships. If you'd like to support us further, you can see that under the video. Thanks for all the feedback lately. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shoutouts. Other than that, let's keep working hard, keep studying hard, and get to our questions. Question 1. Liam is engaging in parallel play next to two peers. The peer reaches for Liam's toy, so Liam starts to scream. Liam's RBT says, Liam, ask him to stop. Liam asks the peer to stop, and the peer is blocked. Liam says, stop to his peers now. The peer being blocked functioned as what? All right, we have a behavior question. And in a behavior question, it's important, almost imperative, that we first identify whose behavior are we looking at and at what point in the ABC contingency are we analyzing. In this case, we're looking at the peer being blocked. So when does that happen? Well, it happens after Liam asks the peer to stop. So first, the RBT says Liam asked him to stop. In response, Liam asks the peer to stop. The consequence is the peer is blocked. So what happens? Well, the peer is removed. The peer's reaching for the toy is stopped. It's removed. However you want to look at it, Liam has got him to stop by saying stop. Now, what do we know about Liam's behavior? That's what we need to find out next. Did Liam's behavior increase? Did it decrease? Well, it increased. Liam now says stop to his peers. And why did it increase? Well, his behavior was reinforced because last time he said stop, the peer stopped, or in this case was blocked, right? He escaped the fact that the peer was reaching for his toys. Therefore, his behavior was reinforced by saying stop. So was his behavior reinforced by positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement? What was the consequence? The consequence was the peer was blocked. The peer's access was denied. The peer could no longer get into Liam's space. Liam was able to escape the peer reaching for his toy. Escape is associated with what? Positive or negative? Well, positive, we're adding something. And if we're escaping something, we're not adding anything. We're getting rid of something. So Liam was able to escape the peer by saying stop, which increased his behavior, making this a negative reinforcer. Tallulah is running a 4-person relay race. The sound of a gun signals the start of the race, and it takes Tallulah half a second to start running. It takes Tallulah 20 seconds to reach her teammate. Tallulah hands the baton to the teammate who starts running towards the next teammate. If you were measuring Tallulah's start time, what measurement would you use? Measurement question. First, what is the question asking about? We're asking about Tallulah's start time. So all we need to look at is her start time. We're not too worried about all these other things happening. So what do we know? Well, we know the sound of the gun signaled the start. It took Tallulah half a second to start running. How would we measure that? Well, in this case, the sound of the gun is what? What's signaling the start of the race, making it an SD. The SD for Tallulah to start running is the gun. The time in between the SD and Tallulah starting her response is half a second. So if we want to measure the time in between the SD and the response, what are we using? Are we using latency? We are. Latency is the time from the SD to the start of the response. The gun signals the start of the race. It takes Tallulah half a second to start running. Tallulah's latency is half a second. So if we want to measure that, we need to use latency. Inter-response time would be time in between responses. So maybe time it took in between giving the baton to the next teammate. Duration would be how long it is, so maybe how long the race took. Rate would be frequency over time. And we're not using any frequency here. We're measuring the time from the SD, the gun, to Tallulah starting running the response. We're using latency. Which of the following answer choices represents rate? Now, rate and frequency are used interchangeably because more often than not, we'll use rate because typically we have a session or an interval which we're using in conjunction with our frequency count, right? However, there is a specific formula for rate. It's a very simple formula, and it's one you should know. So what does rate represent? Well, we know rate has to have frequency, okay? You have to know that. So A is out. It's not duration over latency. Is it frequency over duration? No, okay? We're not worried about the duration, okay? We're worried about time. Rate is made up of frequency and time. So the question becomes, is rate time over frequency, or is rate frequency over time? Well, rate is going to be frequency over time. For instance, if my client engages in a response 10 times in an hour, my rate is 10 times per hour, maybe 5 times per 30 minutes. So you can see we're taking frequency account and we're just putting it over an amount of time. That's how we're finding rate. You need to know this formula because you might be asked to find rate on the exam. And if you are, simply plug it in, your frequency, then you divide it by your time, and you'll get your rate. Jane is a principal at a private high school. She employs 2 BCBAs as consultants. Jane decides to become an RBT and wants to earn hours towards her BCBA. Can she use one of her BCBAs at her school? Okay, not an uncommon situation. This is an ethical question, and it's part of your RBT ethical code, especially now, right? Psychologists or principals or business owners, whoever, might employ BCBAs, and then later on, that employer decides they want to become an RBT, so they can become a BCBA. And that's what happened here. Jane, a principal, wants to become an RBT and wants to start earning hours towards her BCBA. The question wants to know, can she use one of her BCBAs at her school to earn her hours? In other words, can a BCBA she employs supervise her? A, yes, as long as the BCBAs are qualified to supervise her. Well, the BCBAs need to be qualified to deliver supervision, but are they allowed to supervise their employer? B, yes, as long as the BCBAs have taken the supervision modules. Again, BCBAs should complete all necessary requirements of supervision. However, they are employed by Jane, therefore they cannot provide supervision. RBTs cannot employ their supervisors. Jane is within her rights to maintain these BCBAs as employees, even if she becomes an RBT and a BCBA, but they cannot give her supervision hours. That's against the ethical code. It's a conflict of interest, it's a multiple relationship. It is not allowed. So our answer here is going to be C. No, RBTs cannot employ their supervisors. You receive your RBT certification. You are now eligible to provide what services? RBT stands for what? Registered Behavior Technician. And as an RBT, what does that give you the right to do? What are you now able to provide? What is your competence? A, cognitive behavioral therapy under supervision. Does the RBT give you the eligibility and the competence to provide cognitive behavioral therapy? It does not. There's a reason you take a competency exam. Okay, we're testing your competence. We want to practice within our scope of competence. Your scope of competence is providing ABA with your RBT certification. So are you eligible to provide ABA under supervision or without? Well, as an RBT, you have to have supervision. You're not able or eligible or qualified or competent enough to practice on your own. It's not allowed. Okay, even BCABAs need supervision. Only BCBAs and BCBADs can provide without. So RBTs are eligible to provide ABA under supervision. What about D? Sensory integration therapy under supervision. Again, you're not a occupational therapist. You're not trained in sensory integration. You can't claim or say you're providing any sort of sensory integration therapy just because you have an RBT cert. Your RBT certification allows you and makes you eligible to provide ABA under supervision. A group of RBTs receives training on different types of task chains. Their supervising BCBA wants to use chaining procedures in their treatment plan. Before using task chain procedures, what must be done? Let's not overthink this here, okay? The beginning of the question is not really relevant. All we're really focused on is what the question is asking, right? Before we can use task chain procedures, what must we do? So a task chain is what? Well, a task chain is a set of steps leading to a more complex behavior, essentially, right? And we're teaching those set of steps in a certain way: forward chaining, total chaining, backwards chaining, depending on the task chain or the client. But before we can use a task chain, what do we need? Well, we need to develop the task chain. And how do we develop the task chain? Do we use a task analysis? Well, we do. A task analysis is when we break down that complex skill and figure out what is our chain going to look like. So before we can use a chaining procedure, a task analysis must be done to establish the chain. Forward chaining is a type of task chaining. It's not what happens before task chain procedure. Shaping can be done within the task chain, right? But it's not happening before. And discrete trial training can be done within the task chain, but it's not what we're doing before. We're talking about doing a task analysis to create this task chain so we can start to teach the task chain. Before using task chain procedures, what must be done? A task analysis. Client rights include which of the following? Threw this in here straight from the ethical code. Not a hard question. It's a study question. It's an awareness question. So you're aware of what the code says. Are client rights limited to just human rights? No, human rights are certainly included. Human rights are everybody's rights, but they're not just what client rights include. Client rights also include legal rights. Clients are protected by the law. You must follow the law, okay, wherever you reside. And then organizational rules, otherwise known as policy. So clients are protected by human rights, legal rights, and organizational rules or policy. You must follow all three to stay within compliance of the code. So client rights include which of the following? D, all the above. It is the RBT's responsibility to stay in good standing with the BACB. This can be done by receiving supervision hours and renewing your competency. How often does the RBT competency assessment need renewing? Yes, you have to renew your competency. And if you didn't know that, now you do. Okay. We have to make sure, even though we got certified, we have to make sure we're remaining competent and knowledgeable of all the things we're required to know as RBTs. How is this done? Well, through our competency assessment. So you have initial competency assessments before you become an RBT, and then you have competency assessment renewals. The renewal is the same as the initial. We just have to do it again and again. Question is asking, how often does this occur? Is it every 3 months? And it's not every 3 months. Okay, it's a little longer than that. Is it every 6 months? No, it's even longer than that. Is it every year? Yes, every year you need to renew your competency assessment. Your BCBA might do that. Another supervisor might do that, but you have to renew it. You have to sign it. You have to turn it in. Every 5 years is too long. The answer we're looking for on how often does the RBT competency assessment need renewing is every year. John attends a day program and receives ABA services. Whenever John gets to the clinic, he immediately asks an RBT to take off his shirt. His mom says John takes his shirt off because it is so hot outside. Assuming the mom is correct, what is the function of John's behavior? Okay, so let's be careful here. I threw in, first, we're asking about the function of John's behavior. So what is John's behavior? Well, John gets to the clinic. He asks the RBT to take off his shirt. That's his behavior. The mom says John takes his shirt off because it is so hot outside. Now, if we didn't have this part about assuming the mom is correct, okay, this might be a much harder question to answer because this could be multiple functions, okay? Now, the fact that John asked an RBT to take off his shirt doesn't make this automatic, because automatic is sensory and it means it's alone, right? By asking the RBT to take off his shirt, there's a possibly an attention component at play here, okay? But we do have this information that his mom says John takes his shirt off because it is so hot. And the question clarifies saying the mom is correct. So if the mom is correct in saying John is taking his shirt off because it's hot, what is John trying to do? Well, he's trying to escape the heat. So asking the RBT to take off his shirt functions as escape. John wants to escape from the hot by taking off his shirt. Very important that the question clarifies the mom is correct. Okay. Once it says the mom is correct, this question becomes a lot easier. Make sure you read the question and really process what information you're given and what it means within the context of the question. Okay, thanks for watching. Please check out rbtexamreview.com for all of our study materials. As always, questions, comments, let me know. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.